She's just the maid. Why is she getting involved? Eleanor hissed under her breath, her sharp heels clicking with irritation. The hotel lobby of Sterling Grand buzzed with tension as a well-dressed Japanese woman stood silently at the check-in desk, refusing to speak English, Mandarin, or French. The receptionist's voice trembled. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you try in English?" The woman remained still, her hands clasped neatly, eyes calm like a still lake before a storm. Her assistant fidgeted, translators panicked, and murmurs grew louder among waiting guests. "Do we need security?" someone whispered. "She booked the presidential suite and now she won't speak?" Behind a flower arrangement, Rosa Bennett watched, mop in hand. Her gray uniform blended into the background, unnoticed, just the way the hotel preferred. People weren't supposed to see the help, but Rosa saw everything, especially the sharp tone beneath Eleanor's fake hospitality, especially the way power recoiled at silence. Eleanor's voice cut through the air again. "This is America. If she wants service, she needs to speak English." The Japanese woman blinked slowly, unfazed. And then, as the security guard began to step forward, Rosa walked out from behind the cart. Her voice was soft but firm. "O gozaimasu, Takashima-sama. Would you like a seat and some tea while we sort this out?" Time stopped. The lobby went silent. Eyes widened. Someone gasped. And the Japanese woman smiled. Not because she was surprised, but because she had finally been seen. What happened next left the entire hotel speechless. Have you ever judged someone by their appearance, only to be completely wrong? Tell us in the comments below. Rosa guided Keiko Takashima through the quiet lounge, a space usually reserved for VIPs, though no one dared stop her now. The staff stood frozen, their assumptions shattered, watching the janitor lead a billionaire with the elegance of a diplomat. Rosa poured the tea slowly, precisely as if the act itself were sacred. She hadn't performed this ritual in years, not since leaving behind the world of academia and silk-lined lecture halls. Keiko removed her gloves carefully, her posture poised, but her eyes searched Rosa's face with quiet intensity. "Your Kyoto accent," Keiko said softly in Japanese. "It's very natural," Rosa offered a modest smile. "It should be. I lived there 7 years. Professor of cultural linguistics. Silence, negotiation, the invisible lines between words." "And now?" Keiko asked gently. Rosa met her gaze. "Now I clean toilets for a living." It wasn't bitterness, it was fact, spoken not with shame, but with quiet acceptance. "After my wife died, I needed a job where people wouldn't ask about my past or my future." Keiko's hands stilled on the teacup. "I know that kind of silence." For a moment, nothing passed between them but breath. Rosa finally asked, "Why the silence at the front desk? Why refuse English?" Keiko's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've learned more about people by staying silent than by speaking. The louder someone gets, the more they reveal what they fear." Rosa nodded slowly. "So today wasn't a language barrier." "It was a mirror," Keiko said. "And Eleanor Briggs showed me exactly what she's made of." A bitter laugh almost escaped Rosa's lips, but she caught it. "You must see this kind of thing often." Keiko's eyes darkened. "Yes, but I never expected to be rescued by a hotel maid." Rosa looked down at her calloused hands. "People see this uniform and assume ignorance, but I've been invisible long enough to know when something important is about to shift." Keiko placed her hand lightly over Rosa's. "Perhaps it's time they start seeing you." From across the room, Eleanor watched through a glass wall, her eyes narrow with suspicion. Her fingers tapped against her phone as she barked at an assistant. "Find out everything about that cleaner. I want her in my office. Now." Rosa didn't know it yet, but this was the moment her quiet life of hiding was about to unravel. And for the first time in years, she felt ready. The knock on Eleanor Briggs's office door was sharp. "Come in," she snapped, without looking up from her meticulously aligned folder tabs. When Rosa entered, her posture was straight, not defiant, but grounded, as though she'd walked through greater storms than Eleanor could conjure. "Sit," Eleanor commanded. Rosa remained standing. "I prefer to stand, ma'am." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Is this more silent resistance?" "No," Rosa replied calmly. "Just a preference." Eleanor exhaled with visible irritation. Let's get something clear. What you did today, intervening with a high-profile guest, was completely inappropriate. You're a janitor. You are not authorized to speak to guests, much less take control of a situation meant for management. Rosa didn't flinch. The guest wasn't being served. She was being challenged. Eleanor stood up abruptly, circling the desk like a cat sizing up its prey. Do you have any idea what kind of position you've put this hotel in? If Ms. Takashima were offended— She wasn't, Rosa interrupted gently. She was relieved. Eleanor's jaw tensed. Don't get clever with me. You may have charmed a wealthy client with your surprise performance, but let me remind you, you are replaceable. Easily. Rosa held her silence, not out of fear but precision. Finally, she spoke. Have you ever been to Japan? Eleanor blinked. What does that have to do with anything? They have a concept called haragai, the art of implicit communication. Silence speaks more than words, and right now, yours is saying quite a lot. Eleanor slammed the file shut. Enough philosophy. This is your final warning. You are to return to your duties and refrain from initiating contact with any guests. If you so much as bow at the wrong time, you're out. Do I make myself clear? Perfectly, Rosa said with a small nod. But as she turned to leave, she paused. It's curious, she added, her voice almost a whisper, how threatened people get when silence meets intellect. Eleanor's face flushed. Get out! Rosa stepped into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind her like the ceiling of a vault. Downstairs, Keiko was waiting with her assistant, unaware of the confrontation that had just taken place. Or perhaps, not unaware at all. As Rosa approached, Keiko simply looked at her with knowing eyes and asked, Did she try to silence you? She tried, Rosa replied, but that only works on people who fear their own voice. Keiko offered a faint smile. Then maybe it's time we speak a little louder. Somewhere in Eleanor's office, her fingers were already typing an email, one that would soon start unraveling the very control she thought she held. Rosa's apartment was modest, quiet, tucked away on the third floor of an old brick building with no elevator and unreliable heat. But inside it was a sanctuary, neat, warm, and filled with small traces of a life once lived differently. Keiko Takashima sat at Rosa's small kitchen table, her designer coat folded carefully on a nearby chair. She had changed out of her structured suit into a cashmere sweater and slacks, but her poise remained untouched. I wasn't sure if you'd actually invite me, Keiko said gently. Rosa poured tea from a well-worn ceramic pot. I wasn't sure either. But you're not like the others. Keiko glanced at the bookshelves lined with volumes on cultural anthropology, linguistics, and history. You used to teach, she said more as a statement than a question. Rosa nodded. 7 years at NYU, but after Claire died, I couldn't stand the silence of the classroom. I needed somewhere quieter, ironically. So you became invisible on purpose. Exactly. Rosa opened a small filing cabinet in the corner and retrieved a thick folder. She placed it on the table. I didn't just clean floors for the last 7 months. I've been documenting everything. Everything? Every discriminatory comment, every reassignment of rooms based on unpronounceable names. Every moment where someone was judged not by their actions, but by their accent, skin, or silence. Keiko began flipping through the pages. Photos, emails, incident reports. You cataloged all this? Academics never really stop collecting data, Rosa said with a wry smile. I thought one day it might matter. I didn't know it would be today. Keiko's expression shifted from curiosity to focus. And what do you want to do with this? Rosa leaned back, her eyes fierce. I want Eleanor Briggs held accountable, not quietly, not behind closed doors. I want it seen, not just for me, for every staff member who swallowed their voice to keep a paycheck. Keiko closed the folder slowly. You're proposing war. I'm proposing truth in daylight. A long pause passed between them. Keiko finally said, I have a scheduled inspection of the Sterling Grand in 2 days. My team will be posing as guests evaluating customer service. What if we made it real? Rosa's heartbeat quickened. You'd help? I'd expose. Keiko stood, her voice low but resolute. Prejudice hides best in polished places. Maybe it's time we let the light in. Rosa looked at the folder again, hands trembling, not with fear, but with purpose. For the first time in years, she wasn't reacting. She was preparing. Tomorrow wouldn't just be another day at the hotel. It would be the beginning of something much bigger than herself. The next morning, the Sterling Grand buzzed with unusual urgency. Eleanor Briggs stood at the lobby's grand staircase, her blazer perfectly tailored, her lipstick sharper than her smile. "Everyone," she announced to the staff, "we have very important guests today. Investors from Japan. Be flawless." No one dared question her tone. What they didn't know was that this inspection wasn't just about business. It was a trap. Keiko Takashima arrived with 3 evaluators, each dressed like international guests, none speaking English. The staff didn't recognize the performance unfolding around them. They didn't recognize the cameras hidden in lapels, the smartphones recording audio, or the weight of what was coming. One of Keiko's team, Kenji Mori, approached the reception desk looking confused and speaking fluent Japanese. The young receptionist blinked, helpless. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." Eleanor spotted the scene and swooped in like a hawk. "Is there a problem here?" she asked with practiced warmth. Kenji continued in Japanese, pointing to a reservation slip. Eleanor's smile thinned. "Look, sir, if you can't speak English, perhaps you should find a hotel that better suits your communication needs." Behind the lobby plants, Rosa stood with her cleaning cart, silent but alert, her eyes locked with Keiko's across the room. Keiko gave a near imperceptible nod. Patricia turned to the staff. "Can someone please deal with this? We have real investors arriving soon, and we don't have time for—" Then she muttered under her breath, just loud enough, "Why do these people even travel if they can't ask for water properly?" The lobby stilled. Guests nearby froze mid-step. Staff exchanged glances. The moment was cracked open, and Rosa stepped in. "Excuse me," she said gently. Eleanor turned sharply. "Santos, I told you to stay out of—" Rosa ignored her. She approached Kenji and said softly in Japanese, "Good morning, sir. May I help you find your room?" Kenji smiled and responded with a polite bow. They exchanged a few sentences, and Rosa calmly guided him toward the elevators. The lobby erupted into hushed whispers. Eleanor's face turned scarlet. "I told you," she snapped. "You're a cleaner, not a translator, not a hostess, not—" She stopped suddenly, realizing too late how loud her voice had gotten. "Not someone who should be seen." Silence, heavy and suffocating. And then Keiko stepped forward. Her voice was soft but powerful. "Ms. Briggs," she said, switching to flawless English. "My name is Keiko Takashima, CEO of Takashima Innovations. I speak 5 languages, including yours. But today I chose silence to see who you really are." Eleanor's mouth opened, but no words came. Keiko continued. "You just failed a $80 million test, and every word has been recorded." Rosa stood still, not triumphant, but resolute. The truth had been spoken, loudly, clearly, unmistakably. Security escorted Eleanor Briggs from the lobby as a hush fell over the Sterling Grand. Her heels no longer clicked with confidence, only panic. Her expression, once carved in control, now crumbled with disbelief. Keiko Takashima turned calmly to the hotel's regional director, Mr. Carter, who had arrived midway through the confrontation, summoned by a discreet message Rosa had sent moments earlier. "We've captured audio and video evidence of multiple violations," Keiko stated, handing over a tablet. "Racial profiling, linguistic discrimination, public humiliation of both staff and guests." Mr. Carter barely looked at the screen before turning to Eleanor. "You're fired, effective immediately, and the company will cooperate fully with any investigation that follows." Eleanor's voice wavered. But she's just a cleaner," she stammered, pointing toward Rosa. "She manipulated this whole thing. This was entrapment." Rosa stepped forward, her tone calm. "It wasn't entrapment. It was truth. Finally given a voice you couldn't silence." Keiko gently placed her hand on Rosa's shoulder. "And truth doesn't need permission to exist." As Eleanor was led out past the same doormen she once ignored, every eye in the lobby followed her, not out of respect, but as witnesses to the fall of someone who had ruled through fear. Guests whispered, staff stared, phones recorded. Rosa didn't bask in victory. Instead, she returned to her cleaning cart, lifted the mop and rolled it toward the storage room. Just as she reached the hallway, Mr. Carter stopped her. "Ms. Bennett," he said, his voice softer now. "Actually, it's Dr. Rosa Bennett," Keiko corrected. "PhD in Cultural Anthropology, NYU." Mr. Carter blinked. "Of course. Dr. Bennett, we'd like to offer you a position in hotel management, specifically a leadership role in diversity and inclusion, with a salary that honors your qualifications." Rosa looked at Keiko. Their eyes met. Something deeper passed between them. Respect earned not through title, but experience. "Thank you," Rosa said, "but I've already accepted a different offer." "You have?" Carter asked, confused. "Yes," Keiko said, stepping forward. "Takashima Innovations is forming a new department, Global Corporate Ethics. We want Rosa to lead it." A beat of silence passed. Carter nodded respectfully. "Then I wish you the very best." As Rosa walked out of the hotel that day, the staff stood a little taller. The whispers turned to nods. The woman they thought they knew had rewritten the script. Not through rage, but through restraint. Not by shouting, but by choosing her moment. Eleanor had underestimated the power of silence, but Rosa, she had mastered it. And now with truth on her side, she wasn't cleaning rooms anymore. She was clearing the path. 6 months later, the skyline of Tokyo stretched wide outside Rosa Bennett's office window. The Takashima Innovations Tower stood tall, modern, and full of quiet purpose, just like its newest department head. Rosa adjusted the framed photo on her desk, a smiling picture of her late wife beside a cherry blossom tree in Kyoto. The pain of loss hadn't vanished, but it had transformed into something powerful: direction. As global director of corporate ethics, Rosa had already implemented policy reforms across 43 companies. She conducted training in 4 countries, advised on inclusion standards, and wrote protocols that would outlast her voice. Her silence had become action, her invisibility, influence. On the wall of the Sterling Grand Hotel now hung a bronze plaque, in honor of every worker who dared to be more than what they were seen to be. The hotel had been acquired by Takashima Innovations and transformed into a model for inclusive excellence. Meanwhile, Eleanor Briggs had become a cautionary tale. The video of her outburst, captured from 16 angles, went viral. Universities used it as a case study in courses on workplace discrimination. She now worked behind a department store perfume counter, smiling at passers-by who never looked twice. Rosa never gloated. She didn't have to. The truth had done its work. One morning, Keiko joined Rosa for tea in her office, their bond having evolved beyond roles or titles. "Do you regret speaking that day?" Keiko asked. Rosa looked out the window, the city shimmering in morning light. "No," she said softly, "but I regret staying silent for so long." "Then maybe that's the lesson," Keiko replied. "Silence is a tool, but it's what you choose to build with it that matters." They raised their cups, not to revenge, but to revolution. Because sometimes it's not the loudest voice that changes the world. It's the one that speaks last, with purpose. Have you ever felt underestimated because of your background or appearance? Share your story in the comments below, and let's remind the world what dignity looks like.